Welcome everybody, it's Rob Scott from UC Today, and today we are going to delve into user adoption strategies. I've got a fantastic lineup of experts on the line today to talk to us. So first of all, I think we should do some introductions. So welcome, Blair.
Thanks, Rob.
Would you mind giving us a quick intro, Blair? Just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm Blair Pleasant. I'm President and Principal Analyst of ComFusion. I'm an independent analyst, and I'm also co-founder of BC Strategies, which used to be UC Strategies. And I cover unified communications, collaboration, contact center, and everything that falls under the business communications arena.
Great, thank you. And Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa Swartz with Swartz Consulting. I'm an independent vendor agnostic consultant, and I work with clients to help them select the right voice communication technology and get it implemented correctly.
Fantastic. And finally, Kevin.
Yes, hello. My name is Kevin Keeler. I'm the co-founder of Enable UC, and my team and I help organizations effectively implement unified communications and collaboration solutions, most often in the Microsoft ecosystem.
Great stuff. And this is a really topical point or discussion today. UCaaS, team collaboration solutions are really trending right now, as you will all know. And so I'd like to thank everyone for getting involved in today's session. What we are hoping to do is kind of give everyone some good takeaways around how to develop the right kind of user adoption strategy when implementing things like UCaaS, team collaboration solutions. So how about we kick off with the first question, and I'm going to put that one to Blair to start with. Blair, with the advent of UCaaS and team collaboration solutions really going full throttle, what challenges are end users facing when it comes to user adoption from your perspective?
Yeah, a lot of time companies will just kind of throw out technology and they'll give it to users without any warning or really talking to the users ahead of time. And, people are used to the tools that they have that they've been using for a long time. So if they're not prepared for these new tools and they don't know how to use them, then what happens is that they don't use them and that they go back to the tools that they've been comfortable with. And sometimes that might be consumer grade technologies that they brought in that maybe don't have the security and some of the compliance capabilities that the organization requires. So it's really important that organizations, when they are rolling out new technology, UCaaS in particular, that they involve the users and they give them training, they help them understand why this technology is being rolled out, how it's going to help them, how it's going to improve them in their day-to-day work, and really get the users involved so that they feel a part of it and that they understand how and why they're using these tools.
Great stuff. And then the same question over to Melissa on this one. Do you think it's a real sea change from where they've maybe been on just single endpoints onto full UCaaS and team collaboration solutions? What challenges do you think people are experiencing?
Yes, I agree. It is a huge change. And I think what happens is, in a lot of cases, the staff that's doing the implementation just gets buried in all of the complexity that it takes just on the technical side to get the implementation done. And they're not going to realize the full value that they've invested in the solution if they don't also see some of the productivity gains that they could get from these new tools. But it's really easy to just put in what you had and then say, and we'll roll out the rest of the stuff later, or we'll do phase 2 and we'll layer it on. And that's not a bad strategy as long as you actually execute and do the phase 2. A lot of times it gets buried under the next big project. So there has to be a real commitment to making sure that you're not just paying for new technology and then using it the way you've used the old technology.
Yeah, indeed. Kevin, what are you seeing from your perspective? I know you're more Microsoft. Is that fair to say? You do a lot of Microsoft kind of deployments?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I started by being agnostic. I mean, truthfully, I'm agnostic, but, the large enterprises have voted, and almost all of them have adopted Office 365. And so as part of that, increasingly organizations, first looked at Skype for Business, and certainly now we're looking at Teams, maybe to start with collaboration, but increasingly for their kind of voice and video and meetings. I think in the Microsoft space, to build on what Blair and Melissa said, Office 365 has so many capabilities that you really are doing a disservice to your own investment if you don't point out the capabilities. I took a quick look, and over the last 18 months, there's been 263 feature additions to Office, and a lot of those people don't even know that it exists. I mean, heck, they didn't know what Teams could do 2 years ago, and fundamentally it's a brand new product because almost every week, certainly every month, there's significant new opportunities and capabilities that are being rolled out, both for the end user but also for the IT professional. And so I think that's important, and I'm sure we'll talk about different user communities, but it's not only just the end user. There's lots of capabilities that are making IT professionals' lives easier, but that doesn't help them if they don't know about it.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because if I go back kind of 20 years when I first got involved in phone systems, I heard kind of 10% of features on phone systems that users would actually use. Now, I have no idea what that number is now, but I imagine there's probably hundreds and hundreds of features on these UCaaS and team collaboration solutions now to get your head around. So to kick on a little bit further, an interesting discussion point came up from Blair before the call. It was around timing, and just before we kind of get into how we're going to do this, but when do you start planning a program like this for user adoption? So Blair, you're probably the best to kick this one off with. What about timing when it comes to user adoption?
Yeah, companies, when they're even thinking about deploying a UCaaS or UC solution, have to think about user adoption, before they do the RFP. So it's really important to think about adoption, from the very, very beginning. So it's important to get the users involved and find out, what types of features and capabilities do the users need? Different people in different functions need different types of capabilities. And you hear stories about companies that roll out these new solutions that don't have some of the features that people were used to. And then what happens is when these solutions are rolled out, people just throw up their hands and say, well, I've always used, ABC, and the system doesn't have that, so I'm not going to use it. So it's really important from very, very early on to get that user input. And I always say, talk to your users, survey them, find out what features they're using. Are they working from home? Are they remote? What types of devices are they using? Are they using video, and how are they using it? So really get that input early on. And then make sure that you get the solution that's right for your organization. Because if you don't get an easy to use, intuitive solution that's right for your users, again, people aren't going to use it. So to get that ROI, you have to start early on and make sure that you get the right solution and right capabilities. And then make sure you do training early on. Don't just do training after the solution's out there, because again, people aren't going to know how to use it. So very early on, you have to start thinking about user adoption and internal marketing, training, and getting the right solution in there.
Yeah, some key points about just doing that nice and early, isn't it? Melissa, what do you think on that one?
I agree with Blair. I think that it's critical to talk to the users up front and find out how they're using the tools that they have today, and then figure out if there's any new tools that are available that can solve problems and break down roadblocks. And what I see a lot in a lot of situations is that the team that's doing the implementation just inherently, not consciously, but just inherently assumes that other people work the way they do. And there may be a lot of other use cases where people have different types of jobs. Maybe they, cover in a group where people cover for each other, and it's not just a call to a DID number that, it's one-on-one kind of thing. So making sure that you understand all of those use cases and things. I have a client right now where they're heavy. It's a healthcare situation, and they're heavy into speed dial. They have people they call repeatedly, and so they're using old-fashioned speed dial lists on their old phone system. Well, we have to make sure that there's a way that we translate that into the new environment. It doesn't have to be speed dial list, it could be on screen, but you've got to make sure that you cover those capabilities going forward, and then, to Blair's point, that you train people on it. So I agree that understanding the needs up front is critical before you can even make a solution decision. And then the training requirements are really important in terms of making sure that your service providers on board with and going to train people the way you want them to be trained. So it does interweave throughout the whole entire process. And certainly once you've made a decision on your technology, then that communication and training plan needs to be part of the whole implementation plan and woven into the fabric of it all the way through it. It needs to be constant communication.
There's some great points there. Kevin, anything to add on that from your perspective?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think there's always a way, the new technologies, especially the robust platforms, there's always a way to do something that, you've done in the past, right? So I think not having a way to get something done is incredibly rare. What isn't rare is if you go into it trying to do it exactly the same way. First of all, that's not a good plan. But it also, maybe you can't do it exactly the same way, Melissa, to your speed dial approach, right? So, offices that did paging, well, that was an okay way to do it, but it was disruptive, and, now you can IM people. Or the whole boss admin scenario. It's handled much differently than when you kind of were locked at your desk and just had a desk phone. But I guarantee that not only is there a way to do that, there's probably 5 or 6 ways. And so, it's not about picking a solution that has ways, it's more about figuring out the optimal way to do it. And, the importance, I think, of this user adoption and training, especially as solutions move to the cloud. I know the technical team believes that it's all about getting the technology to work. I mean, that's less than 50% of the effort. I mean, the truth is, a lot of the technical heavy lifting, you're not standing up servers in your data center. Yes, the network's important, but really the UCaaS provider in a lot of cases is doing a lot of the work that previously your IT team had to do. So what it means is more than 50% of success is going to be determined by communication, change management, the training, and all of those things done right, is really about that user adoption.
Yeah, and these solutions, there's a lot to consider, isn't there? We're talking multiple devices nowadays. We're talking multiple ways of communicating and collaborating, all in one, potentially all in one application. So let's move on to kind of what training methods work best, because we've also got different generations. We've got business cultures to consider. I imagine you've all got some quite interesting points on this one. But what training methods work best, and maybe just let's touch on those generations as well, and how maybe the considerations around who we've got in the business and how they're working. Blair, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I think there's no one right answer. Any of us who are parents know that kids learn differently, or people learn differently. Some people like a hands-on approach, some people like to read, some people like to watch videos. So we really have to take different learning styles into account. So you mentioned generation. So I think the millennials and Gen Z, Gen Y, they like videos. So I know my daughter, whenever she needs to try to learn something or figure something out, the first thing she'll do is go to YouTube and watch a video about it. So I think it's important to have all different types of training approaches for the different learning styles. So I think to get started, it might be helpful to have kind of a hands-on, classroom type approach, so people can, if there are devices, try out the devices, or the soft phones or the mobile, see how the mobile app works. So sometimes in-person classroom type training is the best. And then you do follow-ups with making sure you have online videos available, maybe communities, FAQs. So different types. And then food is always good, having brown bag lunches, or, Pizza Friday or something. When you have food involved, people are more likely to show up and come to these types of things. So I don't think there's one approach. I think it's really important to have a variety of approaches, but definitely what's important is to do the training, before the system's deployed or the service is deployed, and then to have, video and online capabilities and training methods available after the fact and ongoing. Especially as new capabilities and new features are added, it's important for users to be able to access, again, video or online FAQs or community or something, so that they can have that continual learning about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there an argument that things maybe have got easier to understand and learn, or actually have we gone the other way with all these applications and features nowadays? Melissa, what do you think from answer both really, from training methods and, has it got easier or is it getting harder?
So let me start with the training methods. I agree with everything that Blair said. I think that the best and most successful training just offers multiple options to accommodate different learning styles. And then I think also that there needs to be a commitment from upper management to the training and to making time for people to invest their time into the training. So not necessarily so much about the format, but just you need to spend a half hour or an hour learning this new stuff and learning what it can do for you. So I think having management investment in that and driving that is key as well. As far as, is it easier or is it harder? Yes, it is both. I think there's more stuff to learn, but I do think that the user interfaces are better and more intuitive and easier to learn, but there are more of them. So more stuff to learn, a little bit easier to learn each piece.
Yeah, it's a tough one to answer. I appreciate it. And from a Microsoft perspective, Kevin, even Microsoft have got kind of really moving towards that consistent user interface now, aren't they, on the endpoints nowadays across all the different manufacturers, which I find interesting and a great strategy to improve user adoption and just the overall user experience. But tell me more from a Microsoft perspective, Kevin. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So I'm going to say no, it's not easier, and that's not about Microsoft. That's just I think there is an argument to be made that things are easier. It's just you're wrong when you make that argument. That's the whole the iPhone doesn't come with a manual, so therefore we don't have to train people, and you don't have to. It's just then you're wasting your investment, right? When I buy an iPhone, I pay for it. If I buy it for 10,000, 100,000 people in my organization, whatever the tool is, I kind of want them to be effective, right? So, and the reason it's not easier is because the people don't know the capabilities. If they use 10% of it, but that's not really the goal, right? We want them to be more effective. A lot of these tools are positioned as being productivity enhancers. And so, to enhance productivity, you have to do a couple of things. The right approach is what's effective. And if you're not going to bother measuring effectiveness, then don't even bother. Because just last night, for example, on-demand training is tremendously convenient. In fact, in most organizations, when you measure it, it's so convenient that nobody does it. So a president CEO sent a note just saying, hey, this was great. I loved the training and I went through it. And that was terrific. But what he didn't know is 99% of the rest of the organization didn't bother. The CEO made the time. The other people didn't make the time. So Melissa, to your point, management support has to be there. And one of the things that I love about in-person training is, Blair, to your point, the food gets people there, but you can also see who shows up. And when management says this is important, and then, if it's on demand, you can kind of, and a lot of people don't measure it, right? They create FAQs and they have no idea how many people access the FAQs. And all the training people, they create great training, and everybody tries to do the best, but you have to measure it to figure out what's effective, because there is no right answer, and whatever worked in one organization or one department or one building may not translate. And so what you have to do is you have to have thick skin. You have to say, we're going to do this. We're going to do a lunch and learn and serve pizza. And you do everything, and then when people don't show up, you say, uh-oh, we're going to try something else now, right? And ultimately, people showing up, people using the training materials, surveying them, which came up before, and people saying this was useful. That's what effective is. So we spend a lot of time on the analytics, on adoption analytics, and also in quality, reliability. But user adoption needs to be measured, and keep trying different things until it works.
Yeah, great stuff. And are the vendors doing enough in terms of providing the tools, the videos, the user experience? Do you think the vendors have got a way to go, or do you think we're there now? Because we've seen a lot of changes and innovation over the last few years. I'll put that to anyone that wants to take it.
Well, I think Kevin should, because Microsoft is actually a leader in this area. Microsoft and Cisco have done a really, really good job of providing the training tools, the marketing materials. So, and it's not just about training, it's about that internal marketing. So some of these companies are doing a really good job of providing posters and email templates. And I know I'm doing some work with Ring Central in this area now, and they've got a whole series of email templates to send out. But I think where I'm really seeing the vendors doing a good role or being really strong is in not just training, but again, in that internal marketing and building the excitement, because that's what's really needed. I think the VARs in some cases are doing a good job with the training, but it's more of that internal marketing that I think is really where the most work is needed. And again, Cisco and Microsoft, I think, are taking a lead in that. And then companies like, it used to be Dimension Data, but NTT, they've got a good program. So I think a lot of the big system integrators are doing a good job too.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, Blair. I mean, certainly, Microsoft and Cisco have done a great job with materials. I mean, I think in the case of Microsoft, there's so many different training materials, and they have a whole adoption kit. And so some of it's just about discoverability. You have to know it exists, to be able to use it. And, we also work with other vendors, and, to your point, Blair, that's something that they're working on. I work with a reseller, SoftChoice, and they have a whole adoption as a service program. And one of the things they do is they leverage a lot of the materials that either Microsoft or Cisco has created, and then they curate it and customize it. Because, I think especially with Microsoft, there's like almost too many videos, right? So nobody wants, you don't want to say, okay, welcome to 8 hours worth of training. Like, no one has patience for that. So you need to kind of curate it, pick it, target it, and maybe put it into digestible chunks so people aren't overwhelmed. But there's certainly there's lots of materials, I think, that the leading vendors have created that people should leverage.
Yeah,
I agree with you. Oh, sorry, Rob.
Go for it, Melissa. I was just saying that's a really good point around curating it and trimming it down, because we used to do that back in the day with user guides. You used to take out what you needed and almost reproduce it yourself. But Melissa, go on, carry on.
Well, I was going to echo that point as well. I think the curating is hugely important, and I think some partners do a better job of understanding the need for training and the importance of it. So you have like Microsoft, that's your partner that you're working with on the implementation. Right. I was at a presentation not long ago, in the last few months, so this is not years and years ago, and training came up. It was part of the RFP, and we had delineated the training requirements and asked for on-site training. And the partner said, well, why do you need that? You can just Google it. Yikes. Yeah, it was bad. So not everybody gets it.
Would anyone like to add anything else to this discussion before we close down?
I'd like to build on something that Melissa brought up earlier. The whole idea of executive sponsorship and getting the C-level and the managers involved early on and getting them to really be on board. Because if you don't have that, then it's going to fail. Right. So I've seen examples of, like CEOs who've said, if you want to communicate with me, we have to do it over video. Don't just call me. I'm not going to answer the phone, but we can video. So by getting upper management involved and getting them to really champion this, I think is very important. And then getting other people in the organization, those early adopters and getting people in the organization to really show, how great this technology is, how it improves productivity, how it helps workers, better communicate and collaborate. Because this stuff can really go viral. And that's what it takes, is for it to go viral. So you need those cheerleaders and those evangelists and those early adopters early on, kind of showing the way and showing how this can be done, and how it, and then really setting the pace for it to go viral.
Yeah, we really didn't talk about basically experts in a department, so like a departmental champion, and having someone in that role that's just designated to be the person that understands the technology, can help the people around them. I think that's important.
Yeah, no, that's good. And 2 quick points from me. Management, sponsorship, very important. Had a CIO that, when people didn't open a ticket and just called him directly, the first thing he said is, have you taken the training? And it didn't matter who it was. If they said no, he's like, I'm not going to answer your question. Because, he was just emphasizing, and that was great. It really was supportive of the team. The second quick point is, this is pushing the boundaries of stuff, but I've done some interesting programs around gamification. So there is, I call it trivia training. So there is, beyond the standard lunch and learns and on-demand training, there, if you're an organization and wanting to do something that is a little more fun and exciting, there's some interesting opportunities around gamification. So, and people like that, give prizes. That's a way to encourage people to take the training as well.
Yeah, certainly. Put a game to it. I love learning. I must admit, I'm sold on gamification. But we've got some great points there. So, think about it nice and early. I think that was a key point. The internal marketing, Blair, you mentioned that. I think that's a great point as well. Get that buy-in, get that enthusiasm, get that commitment that people will actually want to learn in the organization, and get that executive buy-in as well, so they're leading from the front. So I think it's some fantastic points there. I'm going to round this up now. So thank you very much, everyone. I take it you'll all be attending some of these events coming up. It's event season here in 2020, so it's going to be a busy one. Enterprise Connect just around the corner, and we've also got the Call and Contact Center Expo here in the UK as well coming up. So lots happening there. I take it you guys are going to be there?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'll be both.
Yep.
Great stuff. So I'll look forward to catching up with you then. But if anyone wants to connect with Blair, Melissa, or Kevin, I'll be putting the contact details on the description here for the video. But thank you very much, everyone, and I wish you the best for the week.